I just wanted to see it through to the end. Joseph was a great brother, a great father. He would have done anything to protect those boys in Summer.
This is Michael McStay. On February 4th, 2010, his brother, Joseph McStay, along with Joseph's wife, Summer, and his sons, Gianni and Joseph Jr., suddenly went missing. Over the next few years, both amateur and professional investigators, as well as relatives of the McStay family, put forth countless theories trying to explain their absence. How had the McStays just vanished without a trace? Where had they gone? Why had they left unannounced? And most importantly, what happened to them? The answers to all these questions came years after the McStays disappeared. Today, we're going to dive into their mysterious case and the sudden revelation about their gruesome, barbaric fate. Joseph McStay was born in the town of Spring, Texas, to Suzanne and Patrick McStay. When his parents divorced, his mother got custody of Joseph and his brother Michael and took him to California. From the very beginning, Joseph had a sort of entrepreneurial spirit. He wanted to make things and sell them to people. He wanted a business of his own. In 1995, he started a company called Earth Inspired Products. Specializing in high-end fountains with gorgeous stonework, the business was an instant hit, and pretty soon Joseph had to bring people in to help him run things. His first employee was Dan Cavanaugh, a web designer that helped him bring his business to a much bigger audience. Shortly after, Joseph hired Charles Merritt, usually referred to as Chase. Chase specialized in welding and helped Joseph assemble the fountains. And it's safe to say that he and Joseph were very close friends. Sometime during the mid-2000s, Joseph met a woman named Summer Martelli. She was a successful real estate agent, the sort of person that had just the attitude Joseph liked in people. She was energetic, motivated, and ambitious, just like Joseph. It didn't take them long to start dating, and pretty soon, they had a baby boy on the way. They named this boy Gianni, and they got married shortly after he was born in 2007. By 2009, the McStays had added another baby boy to their growing family. They named this one Joseph, after his father. And not long after he was born, they started looking for a house suited to a larger family. They both loved California and found out about a town down south called Fallbrook. Located in San Diego County, Fallbrook was a quiet town with just around 25,000 people living in it. It was known for one thing: avocados. In fact, the people of Fallbrook were so obsessed with avocados that they held a festival for it every year. When Joseph and Summer visited Fallbrook, they saw a place where their kids could grow up peacefully and safely. They saw the potential for a long, happy life together. And so, Joseph headed down to Fallbrook to find a home for his family.
Good job. All right. So obviously I would change the flooring. This will all be hardwood. Bust out a hole in this wall. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
It was a beautiful place. Not too big, not too small, just the right size for a family of 4, with room for a couple more, of course, just in case Joseph and Summer decided to expand their family a bit further. In December of 2009, the McStays moved to Fallbrook. Some reports suggest that Earth Inspired Products was worth about $1 million, so the family was doing extremely well. Indeed, videos from Joseph's own YouTube account show them living a positively idyllic lifestyle.
Wow, look how perfect it is. That looks absolutely perfect. How did you do it? Yeah? You made it with this Italian cappuccino machine?
See, when you put it on, it made the cream up. Then I saw how they work. See,
and you steamed it up the milk for Mama's cappuccino? And you made the coffee right here, the real deal, baby?
Yeah,
but didn't you have to grind the espresso beans first? For the coffee? Isn't that done over here?
All was well, or at least it seemed that way. No one that saw this family would think that anything bad was happening under the surface. And indeed, all evidence points to the McStays truly being as happy as they appeared to be. But all of that changed in early 2010 when they seemed to fall off the face of the earth. On the morning of February 4th, 2010, the McStay family was as busy as they could be. Summer had to oversee home renovations, since the family was still trying to turn the house into a home after moving in just a short while ago. While she held down the fort at home, Joseph headed to a Chick-fil-A to have a meeting with Chase. They spoke several more times throughout the day, and as it turns out, Chase Merritt was the last person to ever see Joseph alive.
As far as you know, you were the last person, or at least one of the last people to see him, right?
Yeah. When he left Rancho Cucamonga, nobody else, although I think there's another person or two that he talked to, I'm not sure.
But you were the last person he saw.
I'm definitely the last person he saw.
At around 8:30 p.m., Chase received a call from Joseph, which he didn't answer. He later claimed that he was watching a movie at the time, and probably thought he could get back to Joseph the next day. Little did he know, this was the last point of contact for the McStay family. The next day, Joseph's dad became slightly confused when his son didn't give him a call. Joseph made a habit of calling his dad every single day, so it was certainly unusual for him to just skip it randomly one day. Even so, this wasn't the scariest thing in the world. Joseph was a busy man with a business to run and a home to renovate, so it was perfectly understandable that he might not have been able to call him on a certain day. What was stranger was that neither Joseph nor Summer seemed to be answering anyone else's calls either. The days stretched on, and their family started to get concerned, although still not to the point where they called the police. You see, Joseph and Summer were the sort of people that loved taking unplanned vacations. They just pack up a few things and drive off with the kids, reappearing a few days with fresh tans and wide smiles. Their families assumed that they were off on one of their adventures. But by February 9th, at least one person started to get concerned: Chase Merritt. He called up Joseph's brother, Michael, expressing concern that the McStays had been AWOL for so long. The next day, Joseph's mom, Suzanne, asked Chase to head to their house and check up on him. When Chase got there, everything seemed pretty normal, except for the family dogs being locked outside. While Joseph and Summer enjoyed impromptu getaways, they always left responsibly. Leaving their dogs outdoors was not something they'd ever do. So this was the first sign that something might be amiss. On February 11th, concerned neighbors started to get involved, asking police to come and conduct a welfare check. Police came and found no signs of forced entry, and since they couldn't enter the home without a search warrant, they headed back to the station without any further investigation. It wasn't until February 13th that someone thought to look inside the house. This was when Chase and Michael found their way in through an unlocked window, and found several signs that the McStays had left in a bit of a hurry.
Now, somebody's seen the vehicle leave that night. I don't know who. Now, that's what detective...
You know what they look like?
The lady,
No.
Well, the lady 2 doors down, 3 doors down maybe, she said she called the detective and told him that she remembered that she had seen a big truck, white truck, pull up here.
A white truck.
Yeah, big
Chase's has a white truck with a gray truck. It's an old SBC truck.
There you go.
It's a Chevy 2500 with a box truck on back.
She said that she called the detective and she said she remembers.
How long ago did she call a detective?
I don't know.
Well, which door is it? Let's go knock on her door. I'll go talk to her right now.
She gets...
While searching the home, Michael found out that Summer had left her prescription glasses behind. There was rotting food in the fridge. Every inch of the house seemed to suggest that the McStays hadn't gone off on a planned trip. On the 15th of February, the McStay family was finally reported missing. An investigation ensued, one that would reach dead end after dead end. By the way, I post true crime and new cases here every day, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing. It helps a lot. Since it had been over 10 days since the McStays disappeared, the case was handed over to the homicide squad. Oddly enough, even though the residence was an active crime scene, police allowed Michael and Suzanne to enter. Suzanne wanted to clean up, claiming that she just needed something to keep herself busy. Michael, in the meantime, took Joseph's laptop home, though he returned it to the investigators according to their instructions. The very fact that he was able to take such a vital piece of evidence home in the first place was extremely unusual. When police finally started looking into the case, they turned their attention to the family's white Isuzu. At around 7:47 p.m. on February 4th, the vehicle was recorded by a neighbor's security camera heading away from the residence. This raised a few eyebrows. It was an oddly late hour to go off on a trip, which further suggested that the McStays had either run away haphazardly or they were forcibly removed from their home. However, it bears mentioning that the car in the security footage simply resembled the McStay family vehicle. It could have just been another car of the same make and model. But what police found out for sure was that the McStays' white Isuzu had been towed by authorities from a parking lot near the Mexico border. To be more specific, the car had been parked outside a San Diego strip mall that was known for being the last stop that people made before crossing over into Mexico. Authorities estimated that it had been left there between 5:30 and 7 p.m. on February 8th, although they had no idea where the car had been in the previous 4 days. Another thing that they could be certain of was that Joseph was still in Fallbrook at 8:30 on February 4th. The call that he made to Chase was traced to a local cell tower, so the family hadn't left the town just yet. Police now had the extremely difficult task of finding out what happened between 8:30 on February 4th and 5:30 on February 8th. More importantly, they needed to figure out why the family had just left their car behind and where they headed afterwards. Since the family vehicle was found right outside the Mexico border, investigators assumed that the family had headed south. And yet, it was the manner of their exit that confused everyone. It was almost like they were trying to run away from something. Or someone. Some rumors started circling about Joseph being involved with Mexican cartels. And while this theory was completely random, it wasn't the craziest rumor people floated about the McStays. When police went through Summer's search history, they found out that she'd been looking into a trip to Mexico. She'd apparently been looking up the documents required to cross over into Mexico, and had even been searching what it was like to live south of the border. On top of that, it seemed like Summer had been learning Spanish. Was this all for a family trip, or had she been planning to flee to Mexico for some reason? It would have been extremely bizarre if that were the case, especially since she and Joseph had just bought a home a few months ago. But as it turns out, there was already a theory that tried to explain all that, and it painted Summer as the villain of the story. One of the proponents of this theory was Rick Baker, a radio host that interviewed Michael and became interested in the case. He suggested that Summer had slowly been poisoning Joe, and that she wanted to take the kids to Mexico once her husband was dead. This was a theory that even Chase supported, or at the very least, he confirmed that Joseph had been suffering from some kind of mysterious illness right before he and his family disappeared.
Extreme dizziness, nausea. He went to the doctors several times. They couldn't find anything wrong.
Chase also suggested that Summer was an extremely controlling person, almost to the point where she was abusive. This made it seem all the more likely that she'd taken her husband's life. But once again, this theory proved baseless. Summer's name was dragged through the mud, but there was just too much evidence against this theory. For starters, she hadn't made any major withdrawals before going missing, which she most certainly would have done if her plan was to escape. And secondly, the fact that she left her prescription glasses behind also refuted the theory, because she would have had all the necessary belongings packed up if she'd been planning Joseph's murder. In the end, one element of this theory remained part of the investigation, namely, that murder was involved. The McStays had been gone for so long that they were almost certainly deceased, so the police started looking for suspects. The McStays didn't have any enemies, but there were a couple people that stood to gain from their deaths. Firstly, there was Dan Cavanaugh, the web developer that helped Joseph's business become such a great success. He'd allegedly argued with Joseph about how much money he was getting paid, and as it turns out, he withdrew $7,000 right after Joseph disappeared. Could Dan be the culprit? The police chased down the lead, but Dan's credit card history showed that he'd been in Hawaii during that time, so he couldn't possibly be involved. Eventually, the case grew cold. Police theorized that the McStays had driven to San Cierto and crossed the border voluntarily, but this would turn out to be completely false. You see, the killer had inserted himself into the investigation. He'd been hiding in plain sight all along, and it would take 4 whole years for him to be brought to justice. On November 11th, 2013, a motorcyclist traveling through the Mojave Desert found 2 shallow graves. Each contained the body of an adult and a child. He called the police, and when investigators arrived, they found a massive sledgehammer nearby that they took in for analysis. They found that the hammer had paint used at the McStay home and may have been a tool from the renovation process. The bodies were successfully identified as that of the McStays, and the sledgehammer was confirmed to be the murder weapon. What's more, police found tracks from truck tires nearby. Since they were in a remote part of the desert, they were perfectly preserved, so police were able to compare them to the tracks of trucks belonging to people the McStays knew. One of them proved to be a perfect match: Chase Merritt. The impounded Isuzu was checked again, this time more thoroughly. Last time around, police had assumed the family had crossed the border voluntarily, but now they knew they needed to take a closer look. They found DNA evidence which once again matched that of Chase Merritt. Then came the cell phone records. According to Chase's phone records, he'd been at that exact spot on the 6th of February, 2 days after the McStays went missing. All the evidence, circumstantial though it was, pointed to Merritt being the culprit. On November 5th, 2014, he was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. With the suspect now in custody, police could try to piece together what had happened. It turned out that Merritt had a criminal history stretching back 4 decades. His exploits included burglary, trespassing, and receiving stolen goods. These facts made Summer dislike him, which is possibly why he tried to pin her as the culprit during his interview. He also happened to have a serious gambling problem, and his debts had been growing every year. And he wasn't just in debt with the casinos either. Merritt had also started borrowing money from Joseph at some point, and he owed him about $40,000 by the time of his disappearance. And that was just the money Joseph knew about. On top of everything else, Merritt had allegedly been forging checks in Joseph's name. He'd use his access to Joseph's account to cash the check and then delete the transaction. But this could only go on for so long. When the matter came to trial, prosecutors stated that Joseph might have discovered Merritt's financial misdeeds. It's possible that he confronted him about them, because Merritt happened to cash a forged check on February 4th. It's possible that this is why Joseph tried calling Merritt, and that the perpetrator eventually headed to the McStay residence. Police theorized that Merritt killed Joseph and his entire family on February 4th, but waited until the 6th to drive their bodies out to the Mojave Desert. The McStays never went to Mexico. They'd never even left California. Merritt had buried him right outside the town of Victorville in a patch of desert that he never thought anyone would come across. He then remained closely involved in the investigation to seem as innocent as possible, and it worked for nearly 4 years. Merritt tried to delay his trial multiple times by firing attorneys and even claiming health issues at one point. But in the end, he wasn't able to evade justice. He was convicted on all 4 accounts, with a sentence of life imprisonment for the murder of Joseph McStay, along with the death penalty for killing Summer and the kids.
First, I would like to say I am so very sorry that Joseph's, Summer's, and Joseph Jr.'s family. But the thing that is bringing you this solace is ending my life. Ending my life for a crime that I did not commit.
Merritt has maintained his innocence to the very end. He's claimed that he loved the McStays, and that he's not the person responsible for this crime. But the evidence begged to differ. It painted the portrait of a man out of control. A man that killed a family to hide his financial indiscretions. Merritt currently sits on death row at San Quentin Prison, where he awaits his sentence. So what do you think of this case? Was Chase Merritt's financial desperation and betrayal of trust the driving force behind his horrifying act? Or do you think there's more to the story? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you like the way we create these videos and you want to help bring more cases like this to light, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Thank you again for watching.